Welcome to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian.
And I'm Russ.
If you guys are watching, wondering what the hell are these idiots wearing hats for?
And I don't really know why.
He's a good follower. So today, because the anniversary of the Alamo is coming up, we are talking about Freemasons at the Alamo and giving you a little bit of a history lesson about the Alamo itself. Russ is our historian. Actually, Dave Thomas is our resident.
Yeah, he is.
Russ likes history way more than I do, so when we research, we often find out some things about
He does a lot of research, and then I go, yeah or no, and then go try again.
Yeah, fair. So, let's kind of give you a history of the Alamo for those who don't know, like me. Of course, we're all, remember the Alamo, obviously there's a fight. So, in the early 19th century, there was a small mission in Texas that actually would later become the site of just this epic battle that would arguably shape the history of the nation.
And at the time, it was in Mexico.
Right. So what folks don't know is where San Antonio is, where the Alamo is. That was Mexico, and you'll see a little bit of a video we have after this, which
most of Texas.
Yeah, you look at the map during that time. It's crazy.
Was interesting.
It's very crazy. So the Battle of the Alamo was fought in 1836. It's a crazy story of just bravery, sacrifice, and just like sheer will and determination.
Yeah.
But there's kind of another aspect of this that often goes unnoticed, and we're going to talk about the role of the Freemasons.
Yeah. And what's funny is if you go to the Alamo today, you can read about the Freemasons.
You can. So,
and I'm going.
You've been to the Alamo.
I have.
The Alamo, to me, spoiler alert, unimpressive. I mean, I expected it to be more when I first went there.
Well, in 1836, it actually was, and it was a massive thing
Before
in
it was blown up,
1836. No, just in 1836. That was cool. It'd been there for a long time, and now it's surrounded by hotels and modern
and Ripley's, believe it or not, that's across the street.
Yeah,
so
it's sort of sad, but
it is sad. So it is. So in the early 19th century, Freemasonry had really kind of taken off over the United States and even into that northern part of the Republic of Texas.
Yes.
So Freemasonry was just nuts. So among those Freemasons who played kind of a pivotal role in the independence of Texas, from Mexico were some Freemasons. So the Alamo was a former Spanish mission that they ended up turning into a fortress. And basically that's where these Texans took their stand against the Mexican forces.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Masonry, as they were kind of hunkered down behind these walls, they kind of found themselves fighting for something just greater than just Freemasonry, which that's what we hope. We all want to be part of something, bigger than ourselves. So,
well, I think they were fighting against a lot of things and tyranny, and don't tell me what to do and don't try to run me over. And there's a lot of that type of thought with all Freemasons.
That's true. We're libertines, I think, most of us by nature. So there are a lot of Freemasons. We're just going to talk about a few. I mean, so don't say, "Oh my gosh, you missed this guy." Right? We get it. So we're going to talk about four.
Okay.
Right. So we're going to talk about James Bonham, James Bowie, David Crockett, and William Barrett Travis. Mm-hmm. Also, we're going to touch on Houston as well.
Yeah, and what's funny is knowing just enough about history, and I've read some things and whatnot. So there's an obvious three that I know about, and I could name when we were just talking about this. I just popped these names off. The one name is the first one you're going to talk about is James Bonham. I don't know who he is, so
let's talk about that. So we're going to do a quick recap of these Masons before we kind of turn it over to a really cool, quick video of the Battle of the Alamo and really kind of what went wrong. So James Bonham, which you'll see his name at the bottom of the screen, he was raised a Master Mason in South Carolina. He was the last known messenger to leave and return to the Alamo. So think about this: where we text or email, he was the carrier pigeon. He was the last known messenger to leave and return to the Alamo. So think about how critical that was with all the stuff that was going on leading up to that battle. How many times he probably made some rides?
And Texas is not small.
No,
Yeah.
no, for sure.
Just drive from San Antonio to Houston or to Dallas.
Yeah. I mean, that's 2.5 hours, and you're just. I mean, the big triangle. You can be in the state. You can drive 8 hours in the state.
Yeah.
So for sure. Another Freemason who fought in the Alamo was Lieutenant Colonel William Travis. Skilled lawyer. Everyone kind of referred to him as a man of great conviction. So Travis took over after James Neal. Sam Houston had said, "Neal, you're gonna be the commander," but Neal left to take care of an ailing family member. I don't know what in the world that was all about. But William Travis was a member of Alabama Lodge number 3 in the state of Alabama. So when Neal leaves, Sam Houston appoints Travis as the leader. Well, James Bowie, he was not having it. He got him a group, said, "Nah, we're not good with this." So they put a vote together, and they actually put James Bowie in command. Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie. I don't know.
What do you say?
I would say Bowie.
Like the Bowie knife?
Yeah. Bowie
Yeah.
knife.
Correct me, Texans, where I'm wrong.
Isn't that where the Bowie knife came from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so they say, we call it Arkansas here when it's the Arkansas River. So we've got all sorts of jacked up dialect. Yeah. So they get this coup together and said, "No, Travis, you're not the commander. My boy James is." So
there was factions of different groups,
cliques there. That
appeared there.
So that next day there was a drunken altercation in the camp, and after that they're like, "Shit, I don't know if James should be running it." So they really had dual commanders, which that is never good. So Travis had a faction, and Bowie had a faction over here, right? So fast forward to now they're running dual leaderships, which is just I got a problem with that. So the Mexican president, he kind of found out that the Texans weren't backing down, so he sent word and said, "Dude, we're coming. And when we get there, we're not going to spare any lives."
So who was the Mexican president?
Santa Anna.
Was he a Freemason?
Ooh, man. You think he was? What do you think? Was he?
There was, I think I've read something about maybe he had taken a degree. I don't know.
We're going to have that information. Maybe we'll do a piece.
Please.
You tell us. We didn't research him because he was anti-us at the time. So I don't think the guys there knew what kind of smoke was coming. I think he knew that this general was going to send some people, but I don't think they had any idea what was coming. You think that's fair?
Yeah. And they really weren't supposed to be there either.
Enter Sam Houston. So Sam Houston, I think he realized what Santa Anna was capable of, and it's like, "Boys, we weren't getting the help we needed from the president," because we're going to talk about that later. He sent word to the president, Andrew Jackson at the time. So he ordered Bowie to get a group of men together, go actually grab all the equipment, leave, and then burn down the Alamo.
Yeah. This wasn't in the United States. This was in Mexico.
You're in occupied territory. Yeah.
The president of the United States didn't just go, "Hey, we're going to send stuff down there." That took a little more doing than that.
Just there's a cannon involved. There's fight over a cannon. You didn't return this crap.
Yeah.
So Brother James found out that when he arrived, he's like, "Man, there's a lot of stuff here. We don't have enough animals to get this out of there." By the way, Brother James Bowie was a member of Holland Lodge number 36. So let's talk about James Houston, or Brother Sam Houston. Also a Mason. In fact, on December 20th, 1837, Houston presided over the convention of Freemasons that formed the Grand Lodge of the Republic of Texas, now known as the Grand Lodge of Texas. So even the guy that was overseeing everything was a Mason. Next one we're going to talk about?
And I was in...
You've asked me this. So
I've asked you this a couple times, and I think Houston was buddies with President Jackson, or they were
maybe drinking pals.
Potentially. So I'm not sure about that, but I think that there was a connection.
So let's go there. If he was, why did Jackson not send help?
Because it wasn't the United States at the time.
So, but obviously his boy Sam Houston couldn't convince him enough.
Houston went to Texas to start over because he had some issues.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't welcome where he came from, right? So now let's talk about Davy Crockett. Everyone knows Davy Crockett. They know the songs. I mean, who doesn't have that on their playlist? Avid outdoorsman from Tennessee. He served as a colonel in the Tennessee militia. He was also elected to Congress in 1826. During that time, he became a Master Mason. Initially, he was a staunch supporter of Andrew Jackson, staunch, and who was also a Freemason, as we talked about. Crockett soon came to oppose several of Jackson's initiatives, which eventually caused him to lose his seat because of the popularity of Jackson. So it makes me wonder. So Houston and Jackson may have been boys, but did Jackson not send help because, well, you got old Davy Crockett down there. He's a badass, so you don't need us. Did he maybe take that approach? We hope not, right? But you don't know. I mean, you kind of dismiss that a little bit, but you just never know.
It.
Dudes and egos, right?
Yeah.
So
you still have your hat on. Have you ever ridden a horse?
I have. I was on a dairy. So, yes.
I just want
my uncle had a dairy farm. I used to go down and work on the summer, and it was big enough. You know the dairy farm in Mena, Oklahoma. We actually brought the cows in on horseback.
Okay, very good.
So I might have ridden a horse since you've ridden a horse.
No.
When's the last time you rode a horse?
I don't know, a year or two ago.
Oh, I haven't ridden one the last year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got me there. But I can handle my own on a horse, boys. So before we turn this over to our friends at Weird History, it's a really cool, concise video about the Battle of the Alamo.
Okay, so let's head deep into the heart of Texas. When white Southern settlers began expanding further into Texas, they brought with them the hope of owning their own property on which they could build cotton plantations. The Mexican cotton industry was big business at the time, and everyone wanted a piece of the action. The Mexicans, however, had a couple of conditions they needed met before they would allow settlers to live on their land. The first was that the settlers had to agree to become Catholic. The second was that they had to become registered Mexican citizens. Once they were in business, many of the settlers just ignored the conditions, which didn't exactly get things off on the right foot with their hosts. Exacerbating the situation was that most of the settlers brought slaves with them, even though slavery had been abolished in Mexico in 1829. Though we know it as a fort, the Alamo was originally built to be a mission, which is a religious outpost used by missionaries as a base for supplies and communication. It was only later, in response to attacks by Native Americans living in the area, that the Mexican army decided to convert the mission into a makeshift fort. The repurposed mission, however, was only intended to withstand attacks by native tribes. It wasn't designed to stand up against heavy artillery, and it lacked firing ports for riflemen. Catwalks were constructed that allowed defenders to fire over the walls of the fort, but they left the upper torso of the rifleman's body exposed when he stood, so they were less than ideal. After the Battle of Gonzales, many of the settlers who had come to help defeat the Mexican troops went home. They hadn't come prepared for a long encampment, and they simply didn't have adequate provisions. As a result, the once large army was quickly whittled back down to less than 200 men. That was far less manpower and firepower than would be needed to secure a building like the Alamo. In December of 1835, Sam Houston, who was commander-in-chief of the Texas Army, ordered James Neal to take command of the Alamo. Neal obeyed, but only a few months into his command, he had to leave to care for his ill family. Command was transferred to Lieutenant Colonel William B. Travis, who was the highest-ranking officer on the scene at the time. When he got the news of Travis's promotion, Colonel James Bowie, or Bowie if you prefer, namesake of the Bowie knife, was less than pleased. Several of the other soldiers felt similarly, and quickly voted Bowie into the commanding role under the belief that his fierce reputation for fighting made him a better commander. That should have been that, but Bowie decided to celebrate his new command by getting extremely drunk and causing a stir in the camp. He eventually agreed to share leadership with Travis. With each passing day, Mexican President Santa Anna grew increasingly furious with the Texas Revolution. He felt that illegal immigrants had crossed into his country, flaunted its culture, values, and laws, and were now literally trying to steal a piece of it. So he wasn't happy. Santa Anna demanded the rebels surrender or suffer the consequences. The Texans refused and were officially declared traitors to Mexico. As such, the Mexican president swore that there would be no prisoners taken. He sent a letter to this effect directly to U.S. President Andrew Jackson. But the letter wasn't widely distributed, and for whatever reason, Jackson failed to notify the American recruits that Mexico wouldn't be sparing their lives. The commanders of the Alamo were under no illusions when it came to evaluating their preparedness for battle. They knew they lacked both provisions and manpower, and they knew it would be a big problem when Mexican forces arrived. Colonel James Neal wrote to General Sam Houston pleading their case. But because Houston didn't think he could spare the men necessary for the defense, he refused the request. Instead, he sent Colonel James Bowie and a small force of about 30 men to remove the fort's artillery and then destroy the building. When Bowie arrived, he realized he didn't have the animals necessary to transport the artillery. He was quickly convinced the location held real strategic importance and decided to try and make the case directly to the Texas Provisional Government. Bowie argued that the fort needed more troops and more weapons if they were to withstand the siege, but it didn't work. The Provisional Government was in a state of complete disarray and couldn't muster any support. Even if Houston or the Texas Provisional Government had agreed to help, it's not clear it would have made any difference. Both Bowie and Travis had badly overestimated how long they had until Santa Anna's attack. Santa Anna's siege to take the Alamo began on the 23rd of February, 1836. Rumors of the Army's imminent arrival had residents of nearby Bear fleeing. Travis didn't believe the reports, but nonetheless had a lookout placed on the San Fernando Church bell tower. Only a few hours later, scouts reported Mexican troops about 1.5 miles outside the town. The Texans were still struggling to put together the manpower, weapons, and supplies they needed for an ongoing siege. They were far from ready when Santa Anna marched into San Antonio with an overwhelming force of approximately 1,500 troops. By comparison, the Alamo Mission defenders were only 188 strong. As if being greatly outnumbered wasn't bad enough, many of the Texan soldiers were merely volunteers who weren't properly trained as soldiers. Nonetheless, when Santa Anna raised the red flag that signified the defenders would be given no quarter, the defenders held their ground. Travis responded by firing a cannon back at the Mexicans. Bowie thought that provocation was a bad idea and sent an emissary to meet with Santa Anna. Travis, who resented Bowie's interference, sent his own emissary. Both emissaries were received by the Mexican troops and told that any surrender would have to be unconditional. Once this news was delivered to Bowie and Travis, they settled their differences and defiantly fired the cannon together. The defenders of the Alamo were ridiculously outnumbered and outpowered, but at least they had a tough, battle-hardened leader like Colonel James Bowie to help them through. Right? Well, no, not really. Bowie actually took ill on the second day of the siege and wasn't able to physically assist his men in the defense at all. 2 doctors, including the fort surgeon, tried to diagnose him, but neither could determine what was wrong. The colonel was occasionally carried out to rally and encourage the troops, but historians believe it likely had the opposite effect. Seeing their leader and ostensible MVP so sick was probably more demoralizing to the mostly inexperienced squad than anything else. Finally, in the bleak remaining days of the Alamo, Bowie transferred his half of the leadership to Travis. Bowie would die with the rest of the defenders of the Alamo, but his family, who were at the fort with him, would live through the siege. The siege of the Alamo ended on March 6, 1836. It lasted 13 days, during which time all 188 defenders were killed. Only women and children were spared. Though the loss was pretty decisive, historians estimate the meager force managed to wound or kill roughly 600 Mexican soldiers. But more importantly, the encounter triggered a fighting spirit in the Texans that would become a battle cry for the revolution and ultimately lead to the state's independence. Today, the Alamo still stands, right next to a shopping mall. Times have changed.
What did you think of this episode? To continue to promote Freemasonry, hit that like button now. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give us a comment. The Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where real Masons talk Freemasonry. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a comment.